two dudes, 16,000 miles. A car that's got a fan welded in the wheel. They were captured by guerrillas in Colombia, beyond extreme.
As far as the Deaccession cars go,
still got some Deaccession stuff, some motorcycles we have to move out of the collection.
are we allowed to say we just sold something?
You know, the Deaccession cars are cars that have nothing to do with the vision of the museum.
Touch the DeLorean?
The DeLorean is, Marty, what do we do?
Brakes are sticking. I think the brakes may be sticking.
Is this what I think it is?
Yeah.
Why is it here?
We're here from the future.
Cool, nice.
Hot boy summer, DeLorean summer.
We just basically go till we say, oh,
The big issue has been looking at a car and making an assessment.
With the Deaccession cars, you dust them off and you try and do a little triage on them and see what's wrong.
See if it moves under its own power. And if it does, we may start addressing the brake. We'll check the parking brake and then possibly check the master cylinder, inspect everything.
Check valve in the master cylinder stuck. There's no way.
Well, unfortunately, we got another 8 months of street cars and then we're in the race cars. See if there's any visual evidence of leaks around wheel cylinders, lines, punctured lines or rotted lines. And if everything looks like it'll hold, we'll consider putting brake fluid in the master cylinder and try and pump the brakes up.
You want to take off both lines?
Need to.
What? No. I'm trying to get this crossover line out. See if we can't see if it's blown out or what.
The front brake lines were full of shit. Basically, when they get old and there's rust and fried chicken and stuff floating around in there. Fried chicken, you look at the bottom of your fried chicken, you got all that shit that floats around, that good stuff with all the salt and you eat. It gets in your brake fluid too. So we changed the lines, blew the lines out, changed some soft lines, put a new master cylinder in, and it flows good, and now they're nice. Basically, when there's stuff in there, you can get fluid past it going one way, but it won't go the other way. It's just kind of a little flapper valve, and it kept residual pressure on the brakes, and the hotter they got, the worse it got. That's why they locked up like that.
Most of the time, what I've found is that the master cylinders are all pretty much in need of replacement after sitting so long with brake fluid in them. So if we deem we want to pursue putting brakes in the car, You know, we're gonna replace all the wheel cylinders and master.
It's just like having a heart attack or a stroke. You get these floaties in your blood system, and they find somewhere to park, and then they get comfortable there, and then they stop the flow. Now we at least took that out of the system.
No, we're just gonna replace the calipers. This caliper's still locked up. After we let out all the pressure, so it's gonna need to be replaced.
Brake fluid absorbs moisture, and a lot of those pistons in those calipers are just steel. So they rust and they corrode. And the problem is that we've already jumped in. We've invested money now. It's like, okay, you're with a chick in a bar and you already bought her a couple of drinks, right? Well, you might as well buy her another drink or two because you got money invested in it now. You want the fruit. You don't want to let it go.
Making those decisions is what this car needs, and is it justified by the value of the car.
Over time, the brake fluid inside of it deteriorates the internal components.
Seals grab on.
And you have a case of there shouldn't be any pressure on it right now. It should release. And it's not allowing the pads to release. So we figure this one needs to be replaced, and may as well do the other one because it's probably not far behind it.
All right, here's the thing.
Yeah.
We're in a position where we're looking at replacing the caliper. Yep. So let's take the caliper off and see if we can figure out if there's something that we can do to make it work. Because we're going to have to take the caliper off even if we get a new one or fix this one. So let's pull the caliper off.
Yeah, I think it would be a defeat to let that one go out and say, because it's so close to running. I mean, it's in really great, pristine shape, and it's one of those cars that people want to drive and have. It's really not and it's not something people want to buy as a project. They want to buy it and say, look, I've got a DeLorean, I can drive it. I think that the bores of the brake calipers on the rear probably got a little crust on them, and it froze the pistons and wouldn't allow them to return in.
And we'll dictate how much money it's going to cost to get the car running, driving, stopping.
Replaced some brake parts on the front, then had to replace some brake parts on the back. If it weren't for the music, I'd be insane.
It's just the radio. Don't you remember you told me you loved me, baby? You said you'd be coming back this way again, baby. Baby, 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 oh baby, I love you.
You got to choose your battles. You make it tasty enough to sell, and also people look at it and think, I can fix that.
Took it for a cruise. Make sure the brakes didn't lock up.
Bring the trailer, they don't want to have to pull it on the trailer.
So yeah, we're in the DeLorean DMC-12 here. It's a pretty neat car. It only has 11,000 miles on it, so it's a pretty low mileage car. The car was initially owned by Dr. Henry Bach, who was the chief medical director at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. and he bought it new, I believe in 81 or 82, early 82, and we've had it since the 80s as part of the collection. DeLoreans over the last few years have kind of seen a surge in popularity and demand, and I think obviously that's part to do with the Back to the Future in the 80s. I mean, after the fact, that car really captivated a lot of people and brought DeLorean back on the map by that point, even though it was a few years after they ceased production. So. The museum's deaccession project started in earnest about 3 years ago. Museums across the country do this to curate their collection to make it more mission-driven, and that was one of the big purposes with our deaccession project. The interesting thing about the museum is, though it was under the same IMS foundation, we actually had 2 museums running under that. We had the IMS Museum, that started in 1956, that focused on the race cars. But then a few years later in Terre Haute, Tony Holman opened the Early Wheels Museum. And that's where a lot of the passenger cars, the Indiana-built cars, and kind of non-Indy 500 items were displayed. In the 1980s, the Early Wheels Museum closed, and all those items, since they were purchased underneath the same foundation, moved to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. So the money that we raise from this process can go into fixing other vehicles, restorations, cosmetic repairs, things like that. So we can be in a position later on to acquire vehicles that will help tell our story here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum.
Did you think you were going to be doing that much deaccession when you came in, or were you?
I was warned about it quite a bit when they hired me. Yeah. So, and you know, they were very straightforward about it and almost apologetic. It's like, this is what we've got to do over the next year.
I mean, I got told that it was going to be doing deaccession, but I was like, okay, yeah.
Are you looking forward to getting back on the race cars?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.